So this skirt uses the first kind of pleat that we're going to draft, being the kick pleat. Okay, so the kick pleat is a very straight falling pleat. So it basically almost, if the stitching wasn't there, you probably might not even notice it. And it's basically used to create, I guess, an extra length in the hemline. So when you have a very straight skirt, it just helps to extend that measurement. So you can see if I open this pleat here, okay, you can see how much extra we're adding to the length. Okay, so this skirt here is it's a 6-score variation, so it's got a couple at the back, okay, and a couple at the front. So you can see it dramatically increases the hem length, and then when you let go of it, it releases and falls back in place straight. To draft the pleat, we're going to use the following proportions. So maybe on a separate sheet of paper, just jot down the following proportions that I have here. So the first step to begin is to draft a rectangle 19 by 28 centimetres. Okay, and we will refer to these other measurements as we're drafting this style of pleat. Drafted my rectangle, okay, 19 by 28 centimetres. So roughly that should fit on an A4 sheet for you. So first of all, we're going to draft a construction line, okay, this is essentially going to be our pleat position line, and we're also going to distribute a dart value over that construction line. So it's quite similar, actually it is. It's the same process that we use to establish the centre front and centre back panels on our 6-score skirt, okay? So the first thing we're going to do, so remember that line is technically a variable where we position that construction line. But I think if you measure in 8 centimetres and then square up into the top half of the rectangle, that should be a good proportion. So we're essentially sort of creating a centre panel and a side panel. Okay, so I'm going to measure in and mark that point. Okay, really notice my ruler and the way that I'm orientating it. Okay, now I've sort of marked these in, so move it along until you can actually, it's nice and parallel. Yeah, I might just see if I've got a better marker. Hopefully this one's got a bit more ink. That's a bit better. Okay, so that's my construction line. So down the bottom here, I've got a right angle, okay, on both sides. So the dart length, if you're referring to those proportions, we're going to measure down from the top of our rectangle 8 centimetres and put a balance mark. I'm now going to mark out either side, that 0.75. So please ignore the measurements on my ruler because I'm actually working in a larger scale. So you should be measuring out from the centre, 0.75, okay, and marking a point. And then the same thing on the other side, okay. So if you want more detailed instructions on this, it's on page 118 to 119, and the heading is repositioning dart value over a construction line. Okay, so now that I've marked those points, I'm just marking down. Okay, now also you should be using a technical pencil. I'm only using a marker so that it stands up on the video. Okay, so please make sure you're using a technical pencil, because you can be a lot more accurate with your line work. So that's the dart completed now, distributed over the construction line. We're now ready to draft the kick pleat, okay? So we're going to do this first by measuring along the construction line, up from the hemline, the pleat height, which we're referring to those proportions again, is going to be 12 centimetres. So we're going to measure up that point there, okay, and just mark with a little bit of a balance mark there. So the first step that we have to do now that we've established the pleat height, okay, which is marked here, is we're going to draft on this construction line 1 centimetre of spring either side of the line. Okay, so first we measure out this direction. So again, this is using some of the information that we learnt last pattern making lesson with the foregore. Okay, we're just going to bring that spring line right up to the pleat height. Now, it's basically all pleats use this idea of the spring at the hemline. It's very important to make sure that you remember to draft this spring step, because if you don't do that, your pleats tend to pop out, so they don't sit closed. So it's very important every time that you draft a pleat that you remember to draft the 1 centimetre spring. Okay? So we're going to start by drafting first this side of our kick pleat. Okay, so the height we've already established, that's 12 centimetres, okay, but the depth, okay, or the pleat underlay is another way of describing that, is basically how much width, okay, that pleat value is going to have. So we're going to start by first angling our line, okay, along the spring line. So matching our ruler at the top, okay, of that 12 centimetres, and it's running on an angle along the spring line. So not with the central line you can see here, but along the spring line. So we're then going to square out, okay, the depth of our pleat. So in your case, that's going to be 3 centimetres. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. So again, off that spring line. And then we're going to join those 2 points with a straight line. Went a little bit too far on that end, so just ignore that bit. Okay, so we're now going to repeat the same process for the other side. So again, squaring off the spring line, okay, at the height of your pleat, measuring out or squaring out 3 centimetres. You can always go a little bit further and then rub it out. Okay, now I'm flipping my ruler, and the same thing at the hemline. Okay, and joining with a straight line. So you're basically drafting a rectangle by direct measurement. Okay, to complete our pleat, all we have to do is from the centre point measure up also 3 centimetres, okay, and mark a point on our construction line. And then with an angled line, join the top of the pleat back to the centre line. And repeat for the other side. And now I'm going to trace around the 2 pieces, because what happens is we have a seam line that creates the kick pleat. So first of all, this is the center panel. Okay, so we've got our center front along the waistline, then we take this side of the dart, the central construction line, then we take this side of the kick pleat and back to the hem. So again, center front, waistline, this side of the dart, central construction line, this side of the kick pleat, and along the hem. the side panel. Okay, we have the side, the waistline, okay, this side of the dart, the central construction line, and then this side of the pleat, okay, and back to the hem. Depending on which side you want it to fold, you need to label the spring lines on your draft with different instructions. So if I was to follow this example, okay, what it means is the center panel has the fold line, and the spring line, which would sit under here, becomes the placement line. Okay, if I wanted it to fold in the other direction, okay, actually it's stitched down, I'm not going to be able to do it. But if I wanted it to fold in the other direction, you can see, so the side panel would become a fold, and the fold line of the center panel would become a pleat placement line. So it's very important before you move on to your final patterns that you establish which side is the pleat fold line and which side is going to carry the pleat placement line. Okay, so in the contact, so remember, it's the center panel has the fold, so that's going to fold under. Okay, so remember, this is the center panel here. Okay, so this one becomes now the abbreviation, you do PFL, which stands for pleat fold line. Okay, because that bit is going to fold backwards. Okay, and the other side, okay, for our side panel becomes the pleat PPL, stands for pleat placement line. Pleat fold line, pleat placement line. Okay, so now we're ready to take off the final patterns.